This PowerPoint will be explaining energy expenditure within the body. Energy is the unit that is used to measure calories. As calories are too small to trace by themselves, they're times by 1,000 to give a figure that's easier to put into perspective. So this means that on the back of food it will say kilocalories, as this is 1 calorie times by 1,000. This goes for the same as kilojoules, which is another form of measuring energy, and it's an international unit that's used. Energy is needed for the whole body to function, grow, keep warm, and stay active. The macronutrients will supply different amounts of energy when consumed. So for 1 gram of carbohydrate that you consume, it will supply 4 kilocalories to the body. So for your recommended daily allowance, it's said to have around 130 grams of carbohydrates within your diet. For fat, 1 gram equates to 9 kilocalories, and it's suggested to have around 24 grams a day. And then for protein, 1 gram of that equals to 4 kilocalories. So for men, it's recommended to have 56 grams a day, and then for women it's slightly less, and it's 46 grams a day. So when we work out, so basically how much energy is needed from your nutrients that you intake is dependent on your body mass. So the bigger that you are, the more energy that you're going to need to function. So work is measured in joules and therefore can relate to how many calories you need for an activity. So the equation to work this out is work equals force times distance moved, and to work out your force you have to do your weight in kilograms times by 10. So an example of this, if we use Rebecca Adlington, the swimmer, she's 70 kilograms, and say she was swimming 400-meter race, you'd have to do 70 times 10, which gives you 700, which will give you her force, and then you need to do 700 times 400, as 400 is the distance, and that gives you 280,000 joules, or 280 kilojoules. So that's how much energy she needs to swim her race. Skin fold calipers are a way of measuring body fat percentage. So it's quite an easy method to do, and it works by having the caliper pinch your skin, and because beneath the skin is layers of fat, so the pinch is able to work out how many layers of fat there is under your skin. So the measurement's taken in millimeters and should be done on the right side of the athlete's body, and should be done in the following places as you can see on the screen. It's the triceps, the subscapular, the suprailiac, the abdomen, the front thigh, and then for males only it's the chest, and for females only it's the rear of the thigh. So by doing this, it gives you sort of quite a wide range of different places to take it, so it'll give you a better overall average of the whole athlete's body fat percentage. So the strength of this is that it's easy to do, and the calipers are easily accessible, and they're also cheap. But the weakness to this is people could be doing a different protocol if they're not a professional, and even if they are a professional, if you get it done by a professional and then do it yourself, you're obviously going to get a different result to them. So that means that it might not be as reliable if you're not doing the caliper in the correct place. The next way of measuring body composition is the bioelectrical impedance analysis. So this method measures body composition by sending a low electrical current that passes freely through the body fluids contained in the muscle tissues and just the general body fluids, but it will encounter like a difficulty and a slight resistance when it goes through fat tissues. So this resistance of the fat tissue to the current is what the impedance is, and that will then give a value which is required to work out the body composition. So to complete the test, you can either use a handheld device or scales that you can stand on, and within these devices you have to enter your weight, height, age and gender, as this will be used when it determines the average. So whilst you're doing this, you need to make sure that you're doing the correct protocol. So this means if you're doing the handheld device, you need to make sure that you're standing up with your arms out in front of you to make sure that nothing is interfering with it. So the strength of this is it's simple to perform and it's really quick, so it can be done at home, or some gyms now have them as well. And because it's based on averages, it's normally pretty accurate. Although the weaknesses of this is because it's based on averages, not every, say, 17-year-old girl is the same within their build. So if it's based on an average, it might not be as reliable. And as well, where it's accessible, if you are to take it home, you might not be doing the correct protocol if you haven't got a professional doing it with you. The next one is hydrodensitometry, where an athlete is weighed when they're totally immersed in a tank of water, or can be done in a bod pod. So it measures the athlete's fat percentage, and so when working out when the athlete's in water, they'll be weighed before and then weighed during, like when they're immersed in the water, because fat is less dense and will float in water. Therefore, it won't be picked up on the scales when the person's being weighed. So that means the greater difference between the dry weight and the wet weight will show the athlete's fat percentage. So the good thing about this is it's very accurate, because it's done on like good scales that will show an actual number and give you an actual number to create a percentage. And whereas the other two were just numbers that might not be as accurate or as reliable. But the weakness is that it's very expensive to do, so it's not accessible to everyone, and you will need a proper professional to do it. So direct and indirect calorimetry are different ways of measuring energy expenditure. So direct is it measures the actual amount of heat produced by the body. So it does this by getting people to go in a chamber where it's all enclosed, and the athlete will have to work out. It's normally on a bike, and they will have a breathing apparatus attached to them so they can breathe, and then there's coils in the top which then are filled with water and will heat up due to the energy expired. And then indirect estimates the heat production by measuring the respiratory gases. So this is done in a Douglas bag, and the analysis system from this. So energy consumption is calculated from the amount of oxygen consumed from a litre, and consumed, so a litre equals 4.8 calories. So then however much oxygen they consume, they can then work out the calories that they've needed and used. Basal metabolic rate is the amount of energy required to sustain your bodily functions without doing anything, so in an awakening state. So this could literally just be like laying down and doing nothing. So when you're doing literally nothing, you'll still need 1.1 kilocalorie every minute just for normal bodily functions. So different factors can affect this. The first one being age. So due to adolescence, children will need a higher intake of energy as they're more active and are going to need more energy as they're growing. Whereas people probably like about 60 plus will require less as they're more sedentary, so don't need as much energy as they aren't as active. So if they have too much energy, obviously energy is required from calories. So if they have a higher calorie intake and they're not, but then burning it off, this will cause weight gain. Another factor is gender. So men will need a high intake, as in general they tend to have a larger muscle mass than women. So will need to have more energy in order to move their muscles. Although this isn't always the case, because there obviously is some women that are larger than men, so it's just on average. Another factor is the climate. So in a hot climate you will sweat more in order to cool yourself down. So by doing this, your body will need more calories to do so, as sweating uses up the body's energy. On the other end of the scale, when it's very cold, you start to shiver to keep yourself warm, so your muscles are constantly moving, and to do this they obviously require energy to do so. And the last factor is physical activity. So the more physical activity that you're doing, the more energy you will burn. Therefore, when exercising, you need a high intake of energy, so you're able to perform at your highest possible level. So obviously, if you're not doing any physical activity and you still have a high intake of calories for energy, it just causes weight gain. So you need to have that right balance, which we'll then go on to speak about on the next slide. So the image shows how weight gain can occur if your intake is higher than your expenditure. So this means that you're taking in like too much for your body that it needs, so it just stores it as fat. It also shows weight loss, which is when your intake is higher than your expenditure. And then weight maintenance, which is when the intake and expenditure is balanced. So the metabolic equivalent task uses oxygen consumption per unit of your body weight per minute to estimate the exercise's intensity. So this is because oxygen consumption is like the equivalent to the energy expenditure during exercise. So to work this out, you need to get the MET, times it by 3.5, and then times it by your weight. You then need to divide that by 200 and then times the duration of your exercise. So an example of this would be, say a swimmer is 56 kilograms and they're doing 45 minutes of high intensity swimming. So the MET for this is 10. So you do 10 times 3.5 times 56, which gives you 1,960. You then divide that by 200, which gives you 9.8 per minute, which you then times by 45 because you're doing it for 45 minutes, which would then give you 441 kilocalories. So that's how many calories they will have burnt for that exercise. So that means they then need to add that on to their